Hello, my name is Mason Alexandre, and this is an informative presentation on Huntington's disease. What is Huntington's disease? Huntington's disease is an inherited disease. It causes a breakdown of nerve cells in the brain, causing an enlarged ventricle. It leads to a broad impact on a person's functions and abilities, and it develops midlife at around 35 to 44 years, and it affects approximately 1 in 10,000 individuals. Here you can see the ventricle of the brain, which produces cerebrospinal fluid. This protects the brain and spinal cord and supplies vital nutrients to nervous system tissue and removes waste products from the cerebral metabolism. So you can see why this is very important for our health. So what causes Huntington's disease? Huntington's disease is caused by a single defective gene in chromosome 4. Normally, the CAG DNA segment is repeated 20 times within the gene, but those with 40 or more repeats will eventually develop the disease. People with 40 or more CAG repeats will almost always develop Huntington's disease. What are the effects of Huntington's disease? There are many different effects on patients. Some are not physical, but some are. Uh, there are behavioral disturbances, clumsiness, moodiness, irritability, paranoia, apathy, anxiety, hallucinations, abnormal eye movements, depression, and the impaired ability to detect doors. Can Huntington's disease be treated? There's currently no cure for Huntington's disease. The only possible treatment is to try and slow down the disease to help affected people function for as long as comfortably as possible. Current treatment strategies involve the use of various medications to treat specific symptoms such as abnormal movements and behaviors. Due to a lack of treatment, patients only live for around 10 to 20 years after the condition begins. Age of death is averaged at 51 to 57 years. How the drug works. So first the instructions for building the Huntington are locked inside the DNA in the cell's nucleus. They are carried by a short strand of genetic code called a messenger RNA. The messenger RNA heads to the ribosome and codes for this damaged protein. So what drugs do is they will kill the messenger, which prevents the creation of these damaged proteins. The following infographic shows how the drug destroys the Huntington mRNA that codes for Huntington protein. What proteins are related to Huntington's disease? The Huntington gene, CGA, contains instructions that create a mRNA strand, which codes for the Huntington protein. Huntington protein mutants clump in the brain cells and eventually damage and kills them. This is a mutated Huntington protein, and these mutated Huntington proteins are Huntington's disease. How is Huntington's disease inherited? Huntington disease is caused by the dominant inheritance from parents. H symbolizes the dominant trait of Huntington's disease, while lowercase h symbolizes the recessive trait for not unaffected Huntington's disease. In this scenario, there's an affected father and an unaffected mother. The father's alleles are big H, little h, and the unaffected mothers are a little h, little h. Their children will have a 50% chance of inheriting the disease from the father. There's a one affected offspring to one unaffected offspring ratio. Interesting facts. The national oh, the national research roster for Huntington disease patients and families was established in 1979 at Indiana University for Huntington disease patients. The disease is named after George Huntington, who wrote a paper in 1872 on Cohera, involuntary movements from Huntington disease in patients. Because before being called Huntington's disease, it was called Huntington's Cohera. Mayo Clinic. These are my bibliographies. I use Mayo Clinic,